raise a family. They have some of the same opportunities that me and my wife.
You agreed that we need to see them as a terrorist organization.
On a private cloud server, yes or no?
To love country, to love God, and to try to do the right thing.
Worked for the nation and the interests of the people. Welcome back to the Fresh Freedom Podcast. As you know, this is a podcast with the freedom-loving freshman members of the House of Representatives, where we provide you a behind-the-scenes look at what's happening in Congress. Today I'm joined by my fellow conservative freshman members, Josh Burkeen from Oklahoma and Keith Self from Texas. And our special guest today is Ralph Norman from South Carolina. Ralph has served in the U.S. House since 2017. He's a husband, a father, and a grandfather to 17 grandchildren. So we are happy to have him with us today.
Great to be with you, Eric. My honor.
My first question is, can you name all 17 grandchildren?
Oh, yeah. You want me to name them? I can't do the birthdays. My wife can do the names, the birthdays, and really anything else with them. I've got 4 children. We're real prolific. My middle daughter had 6. My son had 3, and my other 2 had 4.
Wow.
We could almost start a new party.
Well, you got enough to field a basketball team for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's fun. They get along. We work them. We try to bring them up like we were brought up, which is you go to work, you serve your country, and try to do the right thing.
And so what did you do before politics?
I'm a real estate developer. We started, as my father and I, we started residential initially, and I went to college, Presbyterian College, and then when I got out of college, went right to work with the firm. And it was a medium-sized company, but I love the commercial end of it. Mm-hmm. So we started I got there's a designation, a CCIM, which just allows you to analyze commercial property, show your rate of return, and I could go to a McDonald's or Wendy's and know exactly what to pay for the land and the deal to put together so that it made sense for us. And we just grew from there. We were lucky in a great state, South Carolina. People are moving in. We built a lot of houses during that time. We were general contractors and gradually got out of the house building business and into strip shopping centers. And what we're doing right now is hotels.
Okay, that's great. Wow. So what caught you into politics? What was your red-pilled moment?
I'd always been involved in the Chamber of Commerce and civic groups, JCs, the Rotaries, and I just liked the people part of it. And we had, particularly with our commercial business, I just had rules and regulations that made no sense. That came down from not just the state, but the federal government. So I said, well, let me look at this. My last child had graduated from college, and it was just my wife and I. And I said, well, most politicians have train wrecks for personal lives with their children. They're not there. And I just said, well, when they graduated, I'm going to make a run for the state house. And Nikki Haley and I came in at the same time in 2005.
In the state House of Representatives.
House of Representatives, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
I served. Josh, did you serve in the State House? That's some of my favorite times. You can actually get some things done in the state legislature.
Well, you can, and it was like it's like sausage. You see it being made, and I was fascinated with it, and I enjoyed it. But really, I've always felt like that those who enter the political arena don't have to have it. In other words, I took positions then like we do now. If the only threat they can have is to send us back home or challenge it, do it. And that's my position that I have had. And I've always wanted to come to Congress. I got beat. I served a term. They recruited me to run against a 24-year incumbent who had given great service, but he was a liberal. And he was one of the big causes for this country. I mean, he just voted for every spending package that we're facing now with members. So I ran and
against the incumbent.
Against the incumbent.
What year was that, Ralph?
That was year 17.
Okay.
Bad year for Republicans. I got 40-some% of the vote, which I was, looking back, I was happy with. Defeat was real good for me, though. I mean, it makes you prioritize, and I'm glad I got beat. I learned a lot. And again, it's not something I had to have. He had given great constituent service. And that's what if you give constituent service, which, those of us in the Freedom Caucus, we do that for the most part. So anyway, it was a good run. Then when Mick Mulvaney went to the OMB, I decided to run for his seat. And tough election, but I won it.
That's great. Glad you're here.
So it was vacant 2 years later, in 2019, and that's when.
No, I ran in 17. I ran into State House in 05.
But you ran for Congress, and I thought you got defeated.
I did, and I stayed out.
And then you ran again.
They recruited me into State House in 2010. I stayed out in 7 and 8. I mean, I served 2-year term, 5 and 6. Then when I ran for Congress, I lost, so I stayed out.
Okay. Yeah, so back in the 2000s. So the other question I have, you're very mild-mannered, but I think that what I pick up about you just in just a year's time is that you speak your mind, and you're not afraid to speak your mind, and you do it in conference and that kind of thing, but you're always doing it very politely. Maybe that's the Southern charm. But let me ask you, what's the maddest that you've been up here? What has gotten you madder than a hornet?
These spending bills. I mean, what can you do when you're bankrupt? I ask most speeches I have, if you're bankrupt, what can you do? And when you see the money going to places, particularly now, the military is woke. We got a 35% decline in people joining the military. This climate change hoax. Building FBI buildings, funding 80,000 IRS aid. It's just insane. You couldn't run a business like that. And that's really gotten to me. I guess the toughest vote recently was the Israel vote, because I support Israel. Mm-hmm. But I'm just making a pledge. If it's not offset, in this administration, that's the only good thing they have done, is give us things that we can, no-brainer to cut out to pay for some of the good things like Israel. But I just couldn't do it, and I'm going to continue it unless we start having offsets that we could easily do.
You nodded me. That's my cue to jump in.
Yeah.
Did you see that? That wasn't very subtle.
Saw that. That was good.
That's how it works.
This is how it works.
I think in the future I'm just going to go, Josh.
Your turn.
Can I nod at Keith? Does it work for you? Doesn't work for you? Yeah, I guess it's supposed to work for me.
So let me ask this question.
No, you gave it to me. No, it's my time. So you garden. I did notice that you garden. When reviewing some of your, how many acres do you garden?
Well, we've got my actual garden is a little over an acre, but it's real rich. It's bottom land, and that's my hobby. I love doing it.
Now, black bottom land.
Yeah, it's black bottom land. Yeah, it's a that's a first class farmer, wrestler, you name it.
Here,
Just
Jim.
say hello to the camera. Yeah, say hello to the camera, Jim.
Yeah, here.
Jim is crashing our
take
party.
my chair and I'll slide to the side. No, I will. Jump in.
Sit down, Jim.
Jump in. If you'll
Give him
bring
a
me
mic.
in.
Give
I'll
him
come
that
over here.
mic. 'cause
Dang,
that's-
I didn't know I was going to hang out with the rock stars of
Give him
comedy.
that
No.
mic because it's tied to
Just
the
a
camera.
We just hijacked him on his way out.
Well, I can't take your spot. You're like one of the hosts.
No, all I'm doing is asking questions because he, moving
You're the
like a
host?
puppet. No.
Oh, okay.
So now the three freshmen here are sitting in the presence of two of the heroes of the conservative movement in Congress right
I
here.
wouldn't classify myself.
Ralph
Jim's a
Norman
hero,
and
not
Jim
me.
Jordan.
Let me tell a quick story about Ralph. He's in a primary. This is how many years have you been? You've been here like 8 years.
I
Yeah.
came in as a special mid 2017.
So Ralph's in this primary, and all of a sudden he's doing fine, and he's working hard, and he's raising some money, and everything's going well. And then he tells people, he gets a question at a forum, right, a candidate forum, and about the Freedom Caucus, and he says, "Well, I like those guys. I think they're kind of fighting from doing what they said they're going to do, fighting for the things that we care about, the Constitution, blah blah blah," and just like matter of fact, because he's just that kind of guy, and then the establishment came after him. And I remember Ralph calls me. He goes, "Jim, they're coming after me. And that's when we first started. I guess we can probably talk about this in this setting. That's when we first started raising money for Ralph, and he got him. You know, I was learning politics. You don't have to have the most money. You just got to have enough. And we got him enough where he was able to win. And of course, he's been a tremendous member fighting for freedom and constitutional principles ever since. But it was like, what happened, man? I mentioned the Freedom Caucus, and they came after me.
You know, and yes, it's from groups you don't think. The Chamber of Commerce is a group that's supposedly for the business. Right. They've switched. Their board of directors is completely woke, for that matter. But no, I was running against a guy, and nobody thought he was a popular solicitor. Everybody thought I was going to win I was going to get beat. I was 18 points down when I started. He had done a good job, but I outworked him. But no, when that came up, that was a godsend, because people saw all this. The trial lawyers went after me. Just the chamber, all the groups, and I didn't know Jim that. I just heard of the Freedom Caucus. I didn't know anything about him. I said, look, if it's conservative, I'll join him. Then when I heard his name, I said, yeah, I've got to be in this. Mark Meadows. So they came down, and it was fun. Wow. The rest is history.
You didn't know what you were getting into, though.
That's right. It was a great win. It's a great win.
Well, you may have to go get something. But thanks for jumping in, Jim.
Well, the speaker just called.
The speaker's calling.
Oh, you better take that phone call.
Sorry, I didn't mean to crash, but it's great to see you guys.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
So now that he's gone, we can talk about him.
He came down for a fundraiser for me. And again, I didn't know Jim that well. But he did a great job. If you research him, his wrestling record is unbelievable.
So there's a guy named John Smith in Oklahoma who is a Olympic gold medalist. And I actually, in my 20s, worked with John Smith when I was at Oklahoma State University. Cut a deal with him to, I trained horses at his place. He had a little ranch south of Stillwater. And John's deal with me was every now and then take my wrestlers out to go horseback is part of their, coming to Oklahoma. It's part of, you see cowboys. And I said, sure, happy to do that. He said, keep my fences up. You can use my place. So me and a buddy did that. So when Jim heard I was running for Congress, he called John Smith. And what's astounding about this is John Smith was like so famous that I'll never forget sitting at Bull Nanza, which is a PBR event, and Adriano Marias, I went to this event with John Smith and a buddy of mine, his dad. We're in the bucking chutes, and Adriano Marias is about to set the world record for most consecutive bull rides. And John Smith, that's a pretty common name.
Yeah.
He's standing there in the bucking chutes at the halftime show. Yeah, standing there in the bucking chutes, and Adriano Marias from Brazil introduces himself because he's got some time to kill. They're doing this halftime show before he gets on this bull. And he says to him, oh, you're that wrestler from, like he knew from Brazil, this 8-time Olympic gold medalist, John Smith. Jim Jordan beat John Smith. And so when I found that out when Jim came in for me, found out that, so the way I introduced him was, one of the only, in Oklahoma, John Smith is a legend in his wrestling at Oklahoma State.
Him.
And Jim pinned John Smith.
Wow.
Yeah. So
well, he's fit now. You can tell.
So speaking of wrestling, right now we're wrestling with the FISA reauthorization. How did you like that segue?
That's pretty slick.
So you have a chance to vote on the rule, or you already did have the rule vote.
Mm-hmm. Tomorrow too.
For those that are not aware, you're in Rules Committee, which is you may not say this, but it's a powerful committee. Mm-hmm. It's a committee where when bills come, right before they come to the floor, we have to decide what kind of rules we make to how much time to debate, whether to allow amendments, what amendments to allow. So it's a very important committee.
Yeah, and it kind of happened by accident. One of the things with Kevin McCarthy, we didn't want closed rules, meaning we wanted amendments. Let the members of Congress decide what they want in a bill. Open the process up. And single subject amendments, and we all fought for that. And Kevin, after it was over with, he got each one of us, and he said, well, you talk about rules, why don't I put you on it? And I didn't know anything about rules. I never had looked at it, but it's a time-consuming, most of our meetings, I fly in from my home state. We spend 4 hours a day when I come in. Tomorrow, I'll go in at 2. but it's the best thing I've ever done. You get to see all the legislation. You get to hear there's unlimited debate on the amendments.
Oh, okay.
We get to ask questions. We're the linchpins. They put Chip Roy, Thomas Massey, and me. And then you had the others, Guy Rushenthaler.
Wow.
But
And this is a result of the 4-day standoff,
With-
first 4 days of this last Congress, and that was part of the deal. Was coming to a conclusion was put some conservatives, wait the Rules Committee out, put some conservatives, you, Chip Roy, Thomas Massey. That weight is there so that you all have the ability to bring a stronger conservative perspective on the Rules
Well,
Committee.
we just wanted the Freedom Caucus, and y'all know this, has got some resentment on the other members because we're just not status quo. We're gonna stand our ground and do common sense legislation, and part of that wasn't specifically the Rules Committee, although I'm glad McCarthy offered that up, but appropriations. We got Michael Cloud, we got Andrew Clyde. Appropriations is where who doles the money out. So we'll debate tomorrow all the rules. All the different amendments on FISA, and that's where, for you listeners, that's where the government has been spying on Americans. They did it on Donald Trump. They took information from the dossier that was not real. Didn't research it. It was just a baked in hypocrisy, really.
Fourth Amendment matters. It says that in order for people to be secure in their papers, houses, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures, they've got to have a warrant, right? Mm-hmm. And yet we think that we can suspend those key parts of the Constitution, and American people know better.
Let me ask you this, Ralph. Why is a warrant not in the base bill that you're going to be hearing tomorrow?
My understanding was it was too controversial. We had to start off with Jim Jordan wanted the judicial rendition of the base bill. Of course, Intel, we all were there, I think, and heard both sides. Intel doesn't want the warrant. Intel Committee. Mike Turner's chairman. Jim Jordan's chairman of Judiciary. And so Jordan was okay with that because it's kind of benign. It's the amendments like Chip Roy's bill, like Warren Davison's Protect the Fourth Amendment, like the warrant. And the warrant is really the linchpin, I think, for a lot of people. It's not perfect, but it's if you get the warrant where they can't. And what's shocking, 300,000 that we know of Americans that they spied on.
Since 2017, 2018, since the last
They
reauthorization?
inappropriately spied on.
But is that when we talk about that those hundreds of thousands that have had their private information accessed, do we know the timetable on that? Is it 2017?
I don't know when those numbers were compiled. No, it wasn't. This was as a result of 9/11. And that's when FISA was really formed. And
Under the Patriot Act.
Under the Patriot Act. So I don't know where they got those numbers. All I know is what's scary about, let's say if it's cut in half, where are the queries on Americans that we don't know about? That the FBI, which is totally off the rails.
The irony is the Patriot Act was supposed to be designed to stop and to spy on foreigners, terrorists and terrorist activities. And that's why the FISA is Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. But yet it's been used to spy on. The Patriot Act is really being used to spy on patriots, to spy on Americans. And
in a connect the dot type atmosphere where I said hello to someone as a foreign national, now I get to be spied upon.
Well, that's under 702, but there is real belief that it's used, as Eric is talking, not just tangentially, but in the first tier inquiry.
It's gotten political.
So what they say is that we're not spying on Josh. We're not reading Josh Burkeen's emails. What's happening is if Josh is sending emails to a terrorist, a foreign terrorist, then we know that Josh's name shows up on that terrorist's email list. And then we can, what they do is they take your name and they search through further data to see if you've been communicating with other terrorists. And at the end of the day, you're an American citizen. And now they're doing a search on you. That, in my opinion, and what many people in the Judiciary Committee believe is should require a warrant. What's so wrong with going to a judge and saying, we want... But here's what they're not telling you. is that in today's technology, in today's world, is that you're likely caught up in emails with people that are foreign, bad actors, because of the bulk messaging that occurs. Maybe you were on a Reddit forum, and the person that you're communicating with, you don't know that they're who they are, but now all of a sudden you're caught up into an investigation, and they have the right to look for you. But even with that in mind, they still have all these very egregious abuses of FISA, where they were searching their ex-lovers and other people that they had even elected officials or donors to elected officials.
Well, we've got way too many FBI agents that can make queries today. They're going to cut out 90% of it, I hope, is what we were told from the committees. And I look forward to seeing that in the bill.
But what's scary, Keith, is the fact that you can be in a Starbucks or a restaurant and they're hearing everything you say. Right. That's scary that they're using that power to. That's not what government's for. And I mentioned today at the press conference, the other scary thing is to be able to have a government that allows a spy balloon to go over this country, which in my area was over a Duke Power Company, the grid. And then to find out that from a general it landed in salt water so that we couldn't recover, couldn't find the salt water deteriorated the mechanics. That's we're in a dangerous position right now.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be amendments that are brought forward on this bill as it comes to the floor, and what I think is going to be good for the American people, as we talked about, is that they're going to get to see how their members vote. They're going to get to see, did my members support requiring a warrant before they search my information, right? And so, did my members support prohibiting the federal government from purchasing data about me off of the marketplace, which is, basically a Warren Davidson's amendment, but it's called the Fourth Amendment is not for sale amendment, which is, in my opinion, is great, and it's going to be good that we get people on record with that.
Yeah, and the Democrats in the Rules Committee vote against everything we do. There's a feeling among the Democrats that we're on two different planets. That's why it's so important for us to have a good, solid, conservative base on Rules Committee. As much time as it takes, it's very well worth it. This is where it all starts. And plus you get to see all the amendments, what's involved with it, what's good about it, what's not, and to, go back and forth with the different Democrat side and Republican side.
So since Jim came in a while ago, I was asking you about your acre of gardening. Now, I've done an acre. And for those that have never gardened to that level, that's a lot of work. Did you notice how he said that we keep our 17 grandchildren working? Is that part of the work project? Is them in the garden?
Yeah, we work them. We do. They have, when they get old enough, they're on a tractor.
It's great.
They're picking tomatoes.
That's the only way to do an acre.
They're weeding. If you really want to get a discipline a child, put them down there weeding, and put them down there hoeing. Fertilizing. I mean, it's just fun. I enjoy it.
And you give some of the produce away?
Yeah, I go through a neighborhood. I plant way more. I'll plant 30 tomato plants. Each tomato plant will produce 20 tomatoes, big tomatoes, each plant.
Yeah.
Now, they come in at different times. But I'll go out and give them corn. I just love doing that.
An acre, people say, an acre's not that big.
It's big.
Row after row. My parents, 20-something years ago, had a faith-based alcohol rehab type program, and that they started, a faith-based program, and right after college I came home to help with it, and they decided they were going to do an acre. So I got involved helping them with this acre, and the guys that were part of the program there, oh my gosh, filling cattle feed sacks full of okra. And just sit there and rot because you had so much produce you couldn't really give it all away.
Well, there's a spiritual part of this too.
Yeah.
You show, and I go from the seed, but you show me, and I ask all the grandchildren, how does a seed lie dormant? You can keep seed for up to 1 or 2 years. All of a sudden, the minute you put it in the ground, comes forward and produces fruit. That's a miracle.
Yeah, you bet.
In and of itself, a seed, and I have them hold it, and it's. Kind of gives them a base.
Mm-hmm. Gardening.
So this week, the other big thing that happened is we just impeached Mayorkas. Yay! So we
Needed to happen.
It needed to happen. I'm kind of, I'm glad that we did it, but I'm also remiss because this guy is just a stooge.
Did you see him on Meet the Press? Did you see his commentary? This is so telling. He was asked, he was giving all his rebuttal as to what he's done and how he's tried to stem the tide. And she said, well, couldn't you have done more? And his response was, well, it's not as if we've done nothing. That was his response to that question on Meet the Press. It's not as if, because he knows the perception of the American people is. I mean, this was the softball type interview. He knows the perception of the American people is. He's done everything but try to secure that border, that he's been purposeful. I couldn't believe that answer.
Well, as good as it felt to impeach Mayorkas, we've got another serious bill coming up, maybe. And I hope the Speaker holds firm that we will not take it up, but the Senate passed a bill that we should not take up. Mm-hmm. I say all the time that the Democrats will sell their grandmother for Ukraine funding. But the fact of the matter is, we took the most important domestic issue out of that bill, the border, the southern border, and now how tone deaf is that to pass a bill that's got Ukraine funding in it without the border? How tone deaf is that? That just boggles my mind that the Senate would do that. Mm-hmm. And again, I hope the Speaker stands firm on his decision not to bring it to the floor.
Yeah. Keith, we just heard J.D. Vance, Senator Vance, talk about this is Mitch McConnell's linchpin. He's got to have this. This is how he wants to go out. And he will do anything. And he talked about how all of us will get. Mitch evidently has ties with the mega donors that support projects all over the country. They're going to get, all of us going to get pressure from them. And every Democrat, that's why a discharge petition is probably on the table.
Do we have time for him to explain a discharge petition before we wrap up?
Yeah.
So Ralph will explain that. So the Speaker came out to Keith's point last night, and said the $95 billion aid package that includes $60 billion for Ukraine. And if you do the math, that could actually finish our border. That actually could build the physical border, 1,200 miles of physical border. That's real money. But yet wanting to give it to Ukraine. The Speaker came out and said, we're not going to do that. It's not going to go on the floor. He controls, along with Leader Scalise, what gets put on the floor for a vote. The way that they can get around that, the Democrats in solidarity plus a few Republicans can put their name on a petition, get to 217, 218 votes, and force go around the Speaker. In times past, the Speaker has always had the ability to say to their own party, this would take a few Republicans to join with these Democrats to do this. The Speaker's had the ability to go to those people and say, look, you are undermining the ability of our majority. What do you think is going to happen on that front?
Well, you got 212 Democrats, you have 221 now Republicans. You have to get to 218, and there will be. What's different today is we've got such a small majority. In the past, we've had far greater than that, and you've got a lot of different views and people with different motives now. So the only thing that we talked about was how to stop that, and we just got to keep it front and center stage on why we're doing it. I mean, that Ukraine package. And we found out tonight that it's got a kill switch provision in that, right, which will allow the next president to, if it's not funded through 25, forces funding for Ukraine, grounds for impeachment for Trump or Haley, whoever.
Because congressional law will say the funding goes to 25, and let's say Trump gets in and says, no, we're not doing that, then they can claim you're not following congressional law.
And they will. That's what came across pretty clear tonight.
But under the discharge petition, there are ways for the Speaker to slow it down. So even if it passes, he's got techniques that he can use to make sure, and it's not immediate. You get
7 days or so?
At least 7 days, and he can drag that out. So this will be a heavyweight fight.
And they can only do it on certain days, right? Certain days of the week.
Mm-hmm. I forget the days, but it can be done if they work it hard enough. But typically, in the past, it's been hard to get a discharge petition against the ones in power.
Yeah, well, and at the end of the day, if somebody decides to do that, if they decide to join with the Democrats, that's in some regards that's on them. Like their future is set at that point.
Well, and you look at part of that bill that funds. If you break the math out, $300 million for a border wall in Ukraine,
$9 billion for humanitarian aid going to Gaza.
Yeah, in Gaza. Explain that to me.
The question is, how do you know it's not going to fall in Hamas' hands?
That's
How do you know that $9 billion will not go into those who hate Israel?
By nature, Hamas controls Gaza, so by its very nature, they would be the ones controlling where the money went.
They've been doing it ever since they took power. That's what they do.
And get this, you got a president that's buying oil from the OPEC countries who hate America. So it's definitely going into Hamas, Hezbollah.
So the Senate Democrats, of course, driving the train as much as anything. You got a few, I think 22 Republicans joined with them. 26 Republicans voted against this $95 billion package. But to that $9 billion that would go to humanitarian aid, I mean, you just look at where the Democrat Party is. In part, there are some who stand with Israel. Then you've got a large component who are standing with Palestine and the Palestinian Authority. And so for those who helped craft that on the Senate side, to think that $9 billion is not intended to be fully controlled by Israel and Israel designed to stamp out the murderer in the backyard, you'd have to be naive.
Even greater than that, we don't have the money. It's borrowed money. Yeah. We keep talking about fiscal conservatism. Yeah. There is no pot of money. It's borrowed.
Well, and these wars are expensive. Wait till we have Reconstruction, right? History tells that the Reconstruction effort
Marshall
is
Plan.
Much more expensive than the war. And with that exciting news, Ralph, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for being a conservative warrior and kind of a mentor to us. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to our amazing listeners. If you enjoyed the banter and the bold ideas, show us some love. Hit that like button, subscribe for your regular dose of freedom, and share it. Fresh Freedom Podcast is your ticket to liberty. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, X, and Rumble. Make sure that you're on board. Until next time, stay fresh and stay free. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Fresh Freedom Podcast.